sure.
And before the press conferences even start. I mean, we could talk for 45 minutes just about how atrocious the defense is.
He's just picking the big guys. Jordan Mailata, he's huge. He'll be good later on. Josh Sweat, he's tall as hell and strong. Let's get him. We'll figure him out. It's working.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM, live here on DSM Media. As always, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Make sure you're sharing it out, retweeting it, and getting involved in the show. Best way to get involved is head over to our YouTube page, where comments come right up on my screen, and I can post them at the bottom of the screen. DSM Media, as always, is brought to you by Manscaped, the leader in men's grooming products, the GOAT in below-the-waist maintenance. You check them out, manscaped.com. Use promo code TRENDING, the name of the show, TRENDING, at checkout. It gets you 20% off, free shipping, and lets them know that I sent you from Trending in the AM. So make sure you check them out, manscaped.com, promo code TRENDING. Again this week, I am joined again today by my partner, guest co-host, Jason Voorhees at Mustang3651. And we got a special guest to talk football, and most specifically Eagles football, because there's quite a few Eagles fans across the pond. We got Callum. Am I saying it right? Callum, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's fine. No, so that means that wasn't right. Callum at Brits Guide NFL. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? What you do over there, and what brought you to become an Eagles fan over in England?
Wow. Thank you for having me. First of all, obviously, me and you've spoke before, Phil, via Twitter and stuff. I've never had the pleasure of speaking to you, Jason, before, but nice to be here. So I kind of started, I'm in college right now, just going into my final year of my undergrad. And the back end of December last year, I decided to basically start an NFL podcast with a mate that I'd met at university, just to kind of pass some time. And we've kind of, it's kind of excelled to the point where, we've got like over 700 followers and on Twitter and stuff like that. We've met some incredible people. Both in the UK and across the pond. So we basically host a podcast just talking NFL in general. Obviously, being able to come on shows like this and talk Eagles more specifically, I'm pumped up about this because my co-host is a Bills fan, so he gets pretty angry whenever I start ranting about the Eagles. Anyway,
a Bills fan. He must be really disappointed then in this season.
Yeah, well, I actually said this to him the other day. Like, it's a bit of a weird sort of inversion because now, like, he's used to the Bills being pretty good last year and the Eagles were terrible, and now it's kind of turned on its head a bit going into the playoffs. So anyway, how I've become an Eagles fan. So I'd been watching the NFL. Well, I'm 20 now, so I started watching it about when I was like 14, 15 maybe. And then I'd watched it for a couple of years, like in general, and decided that I kind of needed to pick a team now. And so it was right around sort of 2016, that sort of time when I kind of decided, I'm going to try and look for any British players playing in the NFL. And I came across Jay Ajayi, the running back, watched a bit of him in college. And then I think he went to Dolphins, and then the Eagles traded for him halfway through the Super Bowl season. Kind of just tagged along from there, really. And luckily, somehow, the first kind of season that I started following the Eagles was kind of the back end of the Super Bowl season. So I'm just
picked a good time to
do it.
Wow.
Exactly, yeah. I think it's like the stars were aligned, and somehow I managed to pick the right team, hopefully.
So before we get into the Eagles and all, I just want to talk a little bit about England and American football over there. It's becoming a real, like, when they first started doing the England game, over a decade ago, there's some trepidation in America. Like, will the stadium sell out all the time? Will there be, enough fans? But you slowly see over the last few years, there are a massive amount of NFL fans that support all different NFL teams in England right now.
Yeah. I think it kind of goes to show how, I think it's mainly down to sort of the broadcasting options over here, because obviously we have like Sky Sports, which primarily show things like English football, cricket, golf, that rugby is a big one over here, them sort of sports. And then we kind of, like you said, like it was probably like 10 years ago now, that we saw an influx of kind of Sky Sports showing more American sports. So we see a lot more of like the NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB sort of stuff. And then now it's kind of, like you said, took on a kind of whole new kind of force with UK NFL fans. Like the community over here is growing really rapidly. Like there's a lot of guys that are really knowledgeable about the NFL, even about fantasy football and that sorts of things. And like you said, every time you kind of see the NFL UK games, you see, Wembley pretty full with all sorts of different NFL teams being represented, I guess.
Yeah. So I know it would probably never be able to happen because of the logistics of it. But are there enough fans in England that if, the logistics, the travel, all that stuff wasn't involved, that there would be a fan base to have a home team based in London, Sheffield, wherever it may be?
That was my exact question.
Yeah, it's like, is there enough of a fan base that a home team
about that.
would be able to happen over there?
So there's been a lot of discussion about this in terms of, obviously, you've got the Jaguars, who have a pretty good following over here in particular. I think if we were to sort of, like I said, I'm from Sheffield. It's a pretty small town up north. Whereas if you compare it to somewhere like London down south, that would probably be the kind of the focus if they were going to expand. But comment there. Like most of us don't really want an expansion team anyway. I think the guys that do support the NFL have already picked their teams, so kind of expanding would be kind of counterintuitive to that, and I don't think many fans would kind of like that. I think we just kind of prefer to kind of say, right, it's kind of it's your game, but we like to follow it. We don't want to kind of interfere with, starting a new team. The logistics of that would be pretty crazy.
The travel would be insane for the team that in England coming over. It'd be really difficult. It was just something I've always been curious about. All right, well, let's dive into the Eagles. I mean, that's the the reason you're here, Callum. You're here to talk Philadelphia Eagles because that's what you love. Let's start right at the top. Let's start at Jalen Hurts. Obviously, big picture, where you're at with Jalen Hurts as the Eagles quarterback right now.
So coming into the year, I was I think we all wanted to succeed first of all. But coming into the year, I kind of I was probably backing him a lot more than many other Eagles fans. Like I was a huge fan of him, watching him at Oklahoma in particular, and how he kind of advanced going from Bama to Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, and how kind of some of his technical stuff had changed and really improved. So I was a big fan already coming into the year. I'm kind of at the point now where I think he's kind of earned another year to kind of, because when you look at the other options, like the other options would be, a trade for someone like a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers, even if, they might not want to come here anyway. But there's the kind of options. And in terms of the draft, like the QB class is pretty weak this year. I honestly wouldn't be interested in any of those options. So I think he's kind of, for me anyway, is at a point where he's earned another year. But, there is still reservations about his throwing and his accuracy and some of his, I think he's not as bad as people think, but there is still questions to be asked, especially, when you look at that first game of the season against the Falcons, where he put up some pretty decent numbers in terms of his passing. And then kind of from then on in the more recent games, in terms of numbers, I don't think he's put up that many, many impressive games in terms of his passing numbers. But I still think that over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think he's shown a pretty good development in terms of going through his progressions. Sirianni talked a lot about that playing the Denver game, where he kind of stepped through the pocket and kind of gave it a little shimmy and delivered a nice ball to Goddard. So I think he's shown some progressions there. I think he's shown improvements to say, okay, this is a guy that we can maybe kind of say, okay, you can have another year. Let's kind of build around him. I'm not saying he's like the franchise guy or anything, but I think he's kind of earned, himself another start at least, or another kind of.
I believe, Jason, you basically like repeated Jason's exact comments from yesterday.
Bet in a better way. You put it better, obviously. That's spot on. That's exactly how I feel. I think a lot of times people are going to be, obviously, in this fan base, we're overcritical. And I think like with Jalen Hurts, it's not as bad as a lot of people are saying, but it's also not as good as some other people are saying. It's kind of in the middle, and I agree. I think he's earned, unless we have that chance of getting a Russell Wilson for a decent, return where we're not giving up the farm. Obviously, if we could get Russell Wilson with only giving up a first-round pick this year and maybe another one next year and then a couple players, I'm probably going to do that deal.
Yeah.
Especially if it's Jalen Hurts involved. Like if Seattle says, "Oh well, we'll take Jalen Hurts back,"
yeah,
I mean that'd be a no-brainer.
We've all agreed, because I think what Callum said, you said it, and I've said it before too, that there are no better options for next year. So he obviously, deserves that chance to at least be the guy to start the season next year. And George brought up the point here, and we've discussed this on Twitter before, and I brought it up on a few shows. It's 2023, push the picks.
Right.
So we've got 3 first-round picks. Now, I mean, I'm not sure if George wants to push 2 picks forward or 1 or what, but we need to build a team better around him. So we can't get rid of all 3 first-round picks. Obviously, that wouldn't be a good idea. Are you good with that idea about taking 1 or 2 of this year's picks, moving them in the next year, so that you get a future first-round pick, maybe you get another 2nd or 3rd this year as part of that trade, and then we still have the assets if Jalen Hurts doesn't take another step forward next year, that then we, George is saying push 2 picks into the future year there. I mean, I prefer 1 because I prefer the defense, a few more defensive players, a little bit more help. But where are you with pushing forward, picks to have that backup plan if Jalen Hurts doesn't work out?
I'd probably side with you more. Like, I'd be okay with pushing 1. Like, I think when it comes down to it, like the priorities on this team right now, like you said, defensive side of the ball in terms of young talent and blue chip guys. I know there's kind of, like I said, the QB class is pretty weak this year. There's a lot of guys. Obviously, they're 2 big edge rushers, Thibodeau and Hutchinson. But then there's also like Kyle Hamilton. Like, I would absolutely love that guy. I think the Eagles have kind of needed that kind of a pretty good safety for a long time. I think we kind of looked at Kayvon Wallace and hoped he'd step up this year, but he hasn't really kind of been afforded the opportunity of Marcus Epps in. But Kyle Hamilton's a guy that I would also look at, and also the cornerback need, gaining depth behind kind of Slay. Nelson's probably going to be gone at the end of this year, so I think defensive side of the ball needs to be addressed. And I would kind of like having at least, 2 first-round picks this year, having stabs at, defensive players. But at the end of the day, it's Howie Roseman, so who knows what's going to happen.
Well, I already said it on multiple shows, and Jason laughed when I said it. I said it on our boy El Parcero's show yesterday. Don't be surprised if one of those first-round picks go to a wide receiver. I know it sounds completely, obnoxiously asinine to say that, but let's be honest, Howie Roseman's track record, like you said, he loves to draft wide receivers early in the draft, and we have an obvious glaring hole at wide receiver. So don't be surprised. I'm not saying he should. I'm not saying I want that, but it's clear that that's what he does. So, Jason,
can I just counter? You put up
absolutely.
George put up a comment,
the Super Bowl comment.
Yeah, don't forget Nick Foles won a Super Bowl, and a lot of people never saw that coming. So I don't think that comment necessarily makes sense, because Jalen Hurts. You could win a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. Is it going to happen? Probably not, but I don't agree with that. I'm sorry.
No, that's fair. I mean, we've seen the instances where a lot. I mean, Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. There's plenty of bad quarterbacks that won a Super Bowl. But I think what he's getting at is, if Jalen Hurts isn't your franchise guy, then you have to move on. And I get where he's saying that it's better to move on now than 3 years from now or whatnot. Don't waste time on it, because I've seen people bring up Jimmy Garoppolo. There's a lot of mediocre mid-level quarterbacks that'll be available, outside of the Russell Wilsons and the Aaron Rodgers of the world. So there are other options to move on from them too.
Does that really make sense to go from a mediocre guy to another mediocre guy?
No, not at all. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Yeah.
But also when you kind of look at the way the league's going as well, like, I'm not sure there's many teams where you can look at them and say, okay, that's their franchise guy for the next 5 years, because look, like the Rams thought theirs was going to be Jared Goff. Like we thought it was going to be Carson. Like with the way the league's going, like at the minute, like I think you can only point to like a handful of teams where you say, like with the Chargers, like Justin Herbert's a star, like Joe Burrow's a star, but I don't think with that many teams, like you can kind of point to them and say, okay, that guy's going to be there for the next 5-10 years. He's got a good chance of winning a Super Bowl if they put the right roster around him. So like you were saying, Jason, I think, is Jalen Hurts good enough to win a Super Bowl? I think he probably could win a Super Bowl with the right pieces around him. But I'm certainly not saying he's going to be, this next franchise like superstar, like top 5 guy in the league. But I certainly think you could put the kind of pieces around him to do something special. But yeah, with the way the league's going, I just don't think there's that many teams in the league. Like you said, like you were saying earlier, like I think Eagles fans can have an almost tendency to be overcritical of the QB position because of the controversies in the past. But it's a tough one, I guess.
Yeah, but go ahead, Jason.
I just kind of want to counter that and add to what Callum is saying. We kind of talked about this the other day when we were talking about Justin Herbert, like that the eye test tells you that this is a guy that's got it. But realistically, when you look around the NFL, how many teams truly have a franchise, quote unquote, quarterback? I mean, yes, George, you're right. That is the goal. But unfortunately, there's not 32 franchise quarterbacks, because if there were, then the NFL would be a lot better and there would be more, better teams. There's not that many quarterbacks. So unfortunately, and I hate to say this, and I hate to bring it up, but you know what? We kind of got past it for a while. Like nobody's really been talking about it. But we had a franchise quarterback, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. I mean, obviously, we had to move on from him, but we had one, and that's
Remember, I was the one that said Wentz. I used to use the hashtag Wentz is elite. I had him ranked last year as the number 4 quarterback in the NFL going into the season. Boy, was I wrong on that.
Well, I mean, it's just crazy because, Carson Wentz is quietly having a very solid season.
Not franchise quarterback season, though.
I don't know about that. I think
he hasn't had that many amazing games. But George is saying that when you have that many picks, you stand the best chance to get that franchise quarterback because you have the opportunity to trade assets or move up to number 1 overall and get the guy you want. So and that's a fair point as well. If you draft a quarterback 3-4 times in the first pick overall, eventually one of them is probably going to work out.
Well, and that's why I'm not you just talked about don't be surprised if the Eagles draft a wide receiver. I will not be shocked if they do draft a quarterback, even though there's not quarterbacks in our minds that are. Because let's face it, it's Howie. Right. And could he honestly take a quarterback in the first round this year and then actually take one next year? It could happen because
who knows what's happening. The one thing I want to say is that Jalen Hurts, whether he's the franchise guy or not, I think we can all agree on one thing with Jalen Hurts. He is going to work his tail off the rest of the season to play well, try his best to get us in the playoffs. But he is going to work his tail off all season long to work on his deficiencies. Will he be better next year? We don't know. But the one thing about Jalen Hurts is his off-the-field work ethic is top-notch, and he will try and strive to be better next year. At least that's my opinion. I would think most people would agree on that.
Yeah, and someone brought up a good point on Twitter. I'm struggling. I think the kind of, to paraphrase what he was saying, was that Jalen Hurts is becoming that quarterback that you can not only win with but win because of. I kind of think that if there's anyone like you don't want to bet against, it's that guy. Like the intangibles, like he's such a kind of juxtaposition between him and Carson in terms of intangibles and I don't want to get too personally with mental strength or question like their character or anything like that, but when you kind of see the way he carries himself and the way that he commands leadership and the way that the guys are kind of buying into him and the coaching staff as well, like that is a guy that you don't want to bet against.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that. So, you just said the coaching staff and all. So we just spent the first, quarter of this show, third of this show talking about Jalen Hurts. Before we get into this week against Washington in the next 4 weeks, where are you with the same question with Jalen Hurts? Where are you with Nick Sirianni and this coaching staff?
So kind of when the initial press conference, obviously there was a lot of talk about Sirianni and in particular the way that he kind of conducted himself. But I had a few questions coming into the year. I think obviously it was a bit of a rough start in terms of him not being able to run ball or kind of just refusing to run the ball. And then he's kind of figured that out now. And I kind of think I respect the kind of the adversity that the team's overcome and the way that the team's kind of bought into his philosophy. Obviously, there's stuff with the flowers and everything like that team could have just bailed out on him right then. Like the fact that you see clips of like Kelsey like doing the roots on 3 thing in the locker room. Like I think this team actually does believe in Sirianni, and I think that's big. That's big for a first-time head coach, first-time play caller. So I do think that he's at least shown that he can overcome adversity, because there was a period in the middle of the season like that Niners game, we probably should have won that. That Chargers game, I think, was firmly down to Gannon. Like, I don't think Sirianni was to blame for that, but there was a patch in the season where, Sirianni's shown that he can overcome adversity and he's willing to adapt, which is always good. With Gannon, I mean, I got to a point a couple of weeks ago where I was like, honestly, if they fired this guy tomorrow, I honestly wouldn't mind. It was just his stubbornness to play this like kind of too deep shell and just like give everything underneath and just be so passive, and it was just so frustrating to watch. But let's see how the rest of the season plays out. I think I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the reason that the Eagles didn't make the playoffs is because of Gannon. That wouldn't surprise me at all, because I think
you brought up the Chargers game. I mean, I was at the Chargers game. It was the first game I'd been to in years. And, just watching that last drive where all they needed to do was get the Chargers off the field one time to try to go down the field. They were moving the ball on offense, no problem. Just one time, get them off the field. And they couldn't do it. And I was sitting there with my friend Jeff, and we're just watching it like literally like every play. Oh, my God, literally. There's literally like a 15-yard gap around every receiver that caught a pass and every running back. So it was really bad. But, George brings up a comment here. I have no clue what to think of the coaching staff. I want to believe it, but finding it hard. And then he says Gannon doesn't have the players he needs. And I think that is the topic with this team, with whether it's Jalen Hurts, whether it's Nick Sirianni, Gannon, anybody, how you could properly 110% judge any of these coaches. Well, let's be honest. The fact that we're in the playoff hunt right now, to me, is a miracle, because this team is void of talent in so many different positions that, I think it goes to show the leadership of Hurts and Sirianni is carrying them to this point, where they at least have a shot, and I personally think that could catch up to them by the end of the season. We'll see. But, it's hard to judge these guys. Jonathan Gannon, let's be honest. I mean, they don't have a safety. They don't have a true starting linebacker. I know TJ Edwards and Davian Taylor, while he was, healthy, were growing into decent linebackers. Their defensive line, this super talented defensive line, it's not as talented as it seems. There's a lot of holes on defense.
It's funny because, Phil, you just nailed it again. Like, so, we're judging, Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, but you just spoke about the devoid of talent. Like, what would this team look like with how much different would this team be if you added, I'm just saying for hypothetical purposes, just say we had a Devontae Adams next to a Devontae Smith, and you added a defensive end like a Micah Parsons. I'm not saying Micah Parsons, but you had a defensive end that was actually wreaking havoc, and you added like a linebacker that could, make tackles. Just three.
Just a basic average linebacker.
Just 3 positions. How different would this team look when you had a playmaker on defense, a stud wide receiver with another stud wide receiver? Would Jalen Hurts all of a sudden be having 3,000 yards passing and 30 touchdowns? You don't know.
Right.
You can't answer the question, but you could possibly propose it, because to me, right now, he's basically playing with, a prayer, besides Devonta Smith, because the wide receivers are terrible on this team.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely a position of major need. And unfortunately, because of Howie's ineptitude, and making mistakes year after year, that's what's really screwed it up. Because had we had hit on Justin Jefferson, maybe we could have taken Micah Parsons this year. I mean, everyone wants to freak out about Micah Parsons over Devonta Smith. You had to take Devonta Smith because our wide receivers were horrible.
Do you agree with that about how with the void of talent and how it would add, even if not all three, even if you added two elite playmakers on this team, Callum, do you think that would have made a big difference?
Yeah, I do think that, but I also think on the other hand, like the coaching staff have to. I kind of think that when you look at some of the best coaches in the league, they get the best out of average players, and I kind of think that they have to be willing to adapt. Like there was a lot of talk this offseason with Gannon and Sirianni in particular about putting the players in the best position to succeed, and like for the first half of the season they weren't doing that. Like this team from the very get-go should have been a run-first offense. And the fact that they were just refusing to run the ball, like fair enough, now they've adapted. But and Gannon, like you mentioned, we have a very talented defensive line, but they weren't blitzing enough. Like there was just not enough pressure. So you have Darius Slay, one of the best man-to-man corners in the league, and they were playing a lot of zone. So like to some extent, yeah, I do get that. Like this team is devoid of a lot of talent in terms of a roster standpoint, and that goes on Howie, absolutely. But then I also think on the other hand, you have to kind of consider like the coaches have to be willing to adapt and kind of do what they said they were going to do before the season started and put the players in the positions to succeed.
But just to counter that, my counter to that would be then if that's the case and what you're talking about is correct, then why did the Eagles hire a rookie head coach? Why didn't they go with a guy like McDaniels or somebody that had a lot more experience?
That's an easy answer. That's because none of those coaches wanted to come here and play with Howie.
Well, and that's part that's really that's the ultimate problem right there. But we could do a whole show on that.
So real quick, I'm actually curious on Callum's thoughts on this because me and George have discussed, and George has kind of started to slowly swing my way. Like I've been 110% anti-Howie, for a long time. But then when I started breaking down the last 4 drafts, I kind of started to think outside of the misses at wide receiver, he's had actually 3 of the last 4 years really strong drafts. And then obviously the trade with Miami, picking up an extra pick, and then still getting Devonta Smith, that was a huge draft trade right there. Do we give Howie Roseman too much flack, or I mean, he did win us a Super Bowl, and he has had some decent drafts in recent memory.
I think you kind of hit on it perfect there. Like the misses, like I think the kind of one of the reasons why I think there is a lot of like whenever anyone's talking Eagles, like Howie Roseman instantly gets brought up, and I think one of the reasons is because the misses were huge. Like they weren't just like simple misses. Like they obviously talked about the Justin Jefferson one, but then on the other hand, like you've got Jordan Mailata. Like obviously some credit has to go to Jeff Stoutland, but ultimately like, Howie was making the pick, so credit there. Like you look at the draft from a couple of years ago with Maddox and Goddard. That draft in particular, that draft class was, I think all of those guys are now starting, if I'm correct, if I can remember right. But even like last year, I think, he got a lot of flack for taking Landon Dickerson. Like I think when healthy, Landon Dickerson can be a great guy, and he's shown flashes this year. I know everyone wanted to, there was at the start of the second round, everyone was kind of hyping up around Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who went to the Browns, but I think Landon Dickerson can be a great guy. Like, obviously, the Devonta Smith pick, like the whole situation, like you mentioned with Miami, I think was a good move. Like that Miami pick now is just looking horrible. And like, who knows? Jalen Waddle might be a great guy, but like that whole situation looks like it went in Howie's favor. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, just neutral about it now. Like I'm kind of fed up of getting angry about it. I'm just like, because I can see, like you said, like I'm beginning to kind of see both sides of it more. than
I
I kind of
agree.
initially was.
And another great comment there: how he's drafting is not the issue; it's cap management is, and the narrative is normally completely wrong. I actually completely agree with that. Everyone thinks Howie is this cap genius, but then he just keeps kicking it down the tires, and then you end up with seasons like this year where there was no cap space, where we were forced to sign Eric Wilson's, Anthony Harris's on 1-year deal. Who was the other guy? Adams, who we cut. Then he went to Tampa and made a big play. When you kick the tire down the road there too often, eventually you get stuck in positions like this year. And yeah, I mean, we couldn't trade Fletcher Cox because of him kicking down the bonuses and restructuring. So I don't know if Howie's cap management is as good as people think. I always joke around. You can go find 20 Harvard business students that can manage the cap. I just need a GM that can pick the right players. And yes, and I think you make a great point, Callum. It's his misses, while there's only a few, are so massive. That's why Howie gets such a negative rap. Everyone says Justin Jefferson over Rager. I prefer to think of CeeDee Lamb over Rager because all you had to do was trade Jalen Hurts and your Jalen Rager pick, and you would have gotten CeeDee Lamb. So, kick the can. Sorry, I messed up my phrase there. It's early in the morning here. It's not middle of the afternoon like it is for you guys over there across the pond. So,
yeah, well, in my opinion, he's had quite a few misses in the first round. I mean, I consider, to me, Derek Barnett has been an absolute disappointment for being picked at the 14th pick of the draft. You need more from a guy like that, and he's been a disappointment. Dillard, I guess we could say his story's still unwritten, but to me, he hasn't. I mean, obviously, Mailata, 7th round pick, came in and is way better. So I don't know if that was just a lack of, they just didn't review the tape right. I don't know what it is, but to me, that's another miss in the first round. Then you had J-Jaw in the second round over, DK Metcalf. There's plenty of misses.
So those misses are so big it amplifies.
I agree. I agree that you do have to be fair and look at the makes. So I do agree with you because I'm Mr. Anti-Howie, and even I have kind of slowed down my
and the other thing to think about with it is, we're picking apart the last 2 drafts. The 2018 draft initially didn't look spectacular. Maddox was okay. Goddard, we weren't sure because Zach Ertz was here. And now 4 years down, you need 3-4 years to truly properly grade that draft, any of the draft classes. So, I mean, you got to be patient with some of these kids too. We can't write off Davian Taylor. We can't completely write off Kayvon Wallace yet. We can't write off Jonathan Hightower yet because it's still so early in their careers, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. But let's jump into this week and the rest of the season. Obviously, everybody knows the schedule. We got Washington, then the Giants, then Washington and Dallas. First off this week, Callum, Washington. Can the Eagles win? And is it as simple as just continuing to run the ball?
Well, I think they can win, and I think they should win, to be honest. When you kind of look at, obviously there's news coming out about Terry McLaurin with the concussion. I think there's a chance that he might miss. Some of their other guys, Taylor Heineke went out last week near the end of the game. I think when you kind of look at the 2 teams on paper, I think everyone would probably favor the Eagles in this one, especially with guys like Chase Young and Montez Sweat out for Washington. That makes it a lot more easier for Jalen Hurts in this game. But I think when we kind of look at the success that the Eagles have had running the ball, I think yes, I think they should still run the ball. Obviously, hopefully getting Jordan Howard back this week. Hopefully, Jason Kelce is still healthy. There's even been talk about Brandon Brooks coming back. I'm not sure if you guys have heard anything.
Well, it's going to come. We have to wait to see today and tomorrow's practice reports.
Yeah.
That till we can make a proper judgment on the Brooks and Kelce thing. Even Miles Sanders, I think. I want to see what those practice reports from today and tomorrow look like before we know whether they're playing or not.
Yeah, and just to finish that up, I think they've had great success running the ball. I think when you have such a dominant O-line as the Eagles have had in the last few weeks, where statistically they were the best rushing offense in the league for the last couple of weeks,
right?
When arguably one of the best run blocking offensive lines in the league, I kind of think there's an opportunity there that the Eagles need to take. But I just want to see this team, fired up out of the bye week. I'm kind of scared that Nick Sirianni's first bye week, is he going to come out slow? Like, hopefully, like, they're just going to come fired up. Hopefully they're not going to start slow. Hopefully they're going to come out, wanting to play and kind of get a run going towards the end of the season.
I talked about this, earlier this week, and actually I think last week as well, the first bye week. And, we just don't know. I mean, the Eagles, Andy Reid was great coming out of the bye. Doug Peterson was really strong coming out of the bye. We don't know what Nick Sirianni is coming out of the bye. We can learn a lot about Nick Sirianni, the head coach, this week. His first bye week as a head coach, definitely. Yeah.
And I think to some extent, like, obviously a lot of talk has been on kind of should the kind of NFL allow bye weeks this late into the season. But in a way, I kind of think with the way that obviously the COVID cases have been surging lately, I think the Eagles might have got off lightly with that one. Obviously, Quez Watkins and the guy who's escaped my brain again. What's his name? The other guy that was on the COVID list.
Jason Huntley, the
Jason
running
Huntley,
back.
Yeah. Hopefully those two guys are the only ones this week. And with some of the injuries in the last few weeks, obviously Jason Kelsey was pretty banged up the week before the bye week. And then, some other guys like Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders was a bit banged up. So hopefully that bye week has kind of allowed the Eagles to rest a bit, recuperate, and then come into this last stretch of the season, all firing.
Yep. We talked about it earlier this week, Jason and I, on the show. Who would you like to step up in Quez Watkins' spot? Obviously, you got Reagor will probably start opposite of Devontae Smith just because they're going to continue throwing that first-round pick out there. But they did protect from the practice squad Jonathan Hightower, which means most likely he gets elevated for game day. Do you think they should give him that shot? Do you think Arcega-Whiteside should be who should be getting those snaps? Because Quez Watkins, let's be honest, plays about 80-85% of the snaps on any given Sunday.
I think John Hightower would be kind of, if we're looking at kind of replacements in terms of similar characteristics, I think Hightower has shown he can be a deep threat with some of the plays he made last year. Obviously not being, afforded too much of an opportunity going into the season, but I mean, ideally, we'd like a sort of big-bodied receiver like J-Joe, but unfortunately, I know he's made a couple of plays this year, but obviously he's not been too reliable. Yeah, exactly. But I kind of think, I think it has to be John Hightower, I guess.
Hey, Arcega-Whiteside has 100% catch rate, okay? He's got 2 targets, he's got 2 catches, and he's got 2 first downs. So let's not write off J-Jaw just yet.
Yeah, I mean, they trusted him.
We were talking yesterday about Alshon Jeffries on the show and how the Eagles missed that kind of Alshon Jeffrey big-bodied guy. I think, Jason, you said, just bring him back now at this point. Arcega-Whiteside on paper should be that guy. So, let's give him some burn on Sunday.
Maybe they can move J-Jaw to tight end.
He is a blocking wide receiver. I don't know.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Tyree Jackson involved.
Yeah. So I was, while you were talking there, I was checking. It still looks unlikely that Tyler Heineke will be playing on Sunday. So it'll be Kyle Allen. That just makes it that doesn't change anything in my opinion. Because Tyler Heineke, he's an okay quarterback. Kyle Allen is even a step below Tyler Heineke in my opinion. I mean,
McLaurin hurts. If McLaurin's out, that's huge for the Eagles because then they can really zone in and hone in on Antonio Gibson in the run game, who also, don't forget, J.D. McKissick's been out. He probably will be back, but you never know because he's been out 2 weeks with a concussion. Like, he had a bad one. So if he misses, then you're talking really the only playmaker on that offense would be Antonio Gibson. Yeah. So you could basically stack the box and
even tight end, something we struggle to cover. Logan Thomas is now out again for the season, torn ACL, they announced yesterday. Their backup, Ricky Seals-Jones or Ricky Seals, whatever. I mean, he's been banged up. He's played some weeks, not other weeks. So they don't even have they're going with their third string tight end at this point. So really, there's no reason why the Eagles shouldn't win. But then that's what we said going into the Giants game as well. There was no reason for the Eagles to not win that game, and we saw how that played out. So, Callum, how does it play out, and how do you predict this game playing out?
Well, I mean, kind of ideally, I mean, I guess Gannon comes out and blitzes a lot more. Because I think when you kind of look at the track record of Gannon and kind of the game plans that he's kind of put together for different teams, when you see the sort of the lower end quarterbacks, he has actually been more had a tendency to blitz more, which is kind of hopeful for this matchup as well. Whereas when we obviously go against guys like Dak or Justin Herbert, like they were a bit more passive. But hopefully, hopefully he continues the trend. Like hopefully we blitz a lot more, because it's like you mentioned with the guys at Terry McLaurin now. Like this is an offense that they should just shut down. Like on paper, like they should shut this offense down. Especially even in the secondary, I don't think Washington, like if we're talking about the Eagles offense versus Washington's defense, like I think Washington give up quite a lot through the air as well. So I think this is a game that, I mean, we, like you mentioned, we said it about the Giants game, but I think the Eagles will get it done this week. I think they will. I have a feeling. Yeah.
Well,
okay, so go ahead, Jason.
Well, no, just another player that we're forgetting about that is probably going to miss is Jonathan Allen, who might be their best player, their defensive end. I mean, he's a tackle, but he's a monster. So he's probably going to be out, because I saw he was on the COVID list. So you're talking
that is definitely something big that's going on, and everyone has to monitor for predictions, for betting, for gambling, for fantasy, anything like that. Is what 75, 76 players in the last 2-3 days have tested positive. So it's hitting the NFL. There's going to be a lot of players missing football games this upcoming weekend. So it's definitely something everybody needs to monitor big time. So then you got them winning this week, Callum. What about the next couple of weeks? Like, how do you see the rest of the season playing out for the Eagles? Are they making the playoffs, and are they winning out? Are they winning 3 out of 4? How do you see it ending for them?
I think realistically, I think they have to win out. I think when you kind of look at the other teams, I'm not too scared about the Falcons. The Saints are a bit up and down. Obviously, getting Kamara back was huge for them, but I think the most likely contender with the Eagles is probably the Vikings. Vikings are kind of one of those teams where they can beat anyone on their day, but they can also lose to anyone, as we saw in the Lions game. So I think the Lions are kind of the most likely contender with the Eagles. I think they have to win out. I think there's a chance they could. I think we've got to hope that the Cowboys kind of just win out and secure the division. And then obviously there's a chance that the Eagles season could be kind of decided on that last week against Dallas, which would be huge. So yeah, realistically, I think they have to win out, even though like the Vikings have a pretty tricky schedule to kind of.
I don't actually think they need to win out. I think they can win 3 or 4 and still get it. Because let's be honest, I know Washington's banged up this week. If they're healthy by the time we play them in 2 weeks, for the second time, I could see them losing that second Washington game. And then as long as Dallas isn't playing their starters, I could still, like you said, I see a win against Dallas necessary. But I think 9-8 gets in, because just like you said, I mean, there are a lot of teams fighting. We mentioned the Falcons, the Vikings, a couple teams, but there's a lot of teams fighting for that last, wild card spot. I think 9 wins is enough.
What would be the tiebreaker? Like if
there's a lot of different tiebreakers.
Vikings finished at the same
it
record. It
probably comes down to division first. Strength of schedule is part of it. Division record, conference record, head-to-head matchup. So like say us and the and the Falcons, that would the head-to-head matchup would play, or us against San Francisco. The head-to-head matchup.
So that's always the number one.
Head-to-head is the first thing if you played each other. Yeah. So
and that's we haven't played the Vikings, so then it would probably have to go to like strength of
division and strength of schedule and things like that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so I think 3-1 could get them there. Would it guarantee it? No, because if the Vikings went 4-0, then obviously. But I think most teams, I don't see really any of these teams running the table. So I think 3-1 is. You're probably.
I also don't see any of these teams winning a game if they make the playoffs. That's the other thing, because now I want to transition to the rest of the NFL to wrap this show up with Callum. There's literally last week it was like 15 teams that were like right around 500 in the NFL, but then you got 6 or 7 teams that are just above and beyond elite records. So how do you see the rest of this NFL season shaking out? I mean, you've got the Rams, the Cardinals, you've got the Bucks, the Rodgers, the Packers. all at the top of the NFC, and in the AFC, you got the same thing. You got a couple teams right at the top. Do you think there's a clear-cut favorite in either conference to run the table to get out and get to the Super Bowl, or is it just like throw a dart right now at predictions because on any given Sunday, any of these teams could win or lose?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think, this is kind of one of the NFL, one of the only NFL seasons where I've kind of thought, like, I genuinely don't know who's going to make the Super Bowl at this point. Yeah. Like this late into the season, like I still think there is still time for surprises. I think if the Chargers get hot, they're a team to look out for. Up there with the Chiefs on that side of the board, and then obviously, like you said, the Packers, the Cardinals, the Rams. The Rams are. I was quite high on the Rams going into the season anyway, but I know obviously they've kind of built this dream team now, and they're all in. It's a tough one because there is kind of 4 or 5 teams on that fringe of becoming elite, and then you've obviously got Tampa Bay, and we all know how good they are. So I still think it's kind of open going into the latter part of the season. Yeah.
If you had to place $5 today, £5 because you're over in England, you had to place £5 on 2 teams to make the Super Bowl, who would you be picking to make the Super Bowl at this point? All right, no, £5. That's not enough money. You're a college kid. You got extra income coming in, probably £50. We'll say.
I think I'd have to go Packers from the NFC.
Yeah,
and then I might go as an outside thing. I don't know why I have a feeling about the Chargers this year.
Okay, so Packers Chargers Super Bowl. That would be interesting. Aaron Rodgers versus Justin Herbert. The legend versus the young kid. That would actually have some really good intrigue and storyline to it. Absolutely. Jason, do you agree with that? Is that a possibility? Are you going to place a bet like as soon as this show ends?
I think it's definitely a possibility because yesterday I said that the Packers are definitely.
Yeah. I kind of forgot when we were talking about it. I forgot to mention the Packers. Well, you reminded me about them.
I have the Packers and Tampa in the NFC Championship, and I have in the AFC my picks. I didn't think of the Chiefs, but he's right. Like they're getting hot down the stretch, but I still think the Chiefs. Everyone's sleeping on. I think they've struggled a lot, but if you look at the Chiefs' last 7 games, they've only given up 10 points a game on defense. So their defense, which is their Achilles heel, is actually playing tremendous. If they can continue the success with their defense, I see the Chiefs always. You can never, to me, count out Mahomes. Like I know, like I said, he's not had his Mahomes typical season, but he is still young. I mean, and they have Tyreek Hill.
We kind of forget how young Patrick Mahomes really is.
Exactly.
Because he had so much success so quickly in his career. So yeah, we all definitely forget that.
But yeah, but to Callum's point, like the Chargers, the Chargers to me are weird because they're kind of the same as far as their defense was terrible, and now all of a sudden they're actually playing better defensively. Like they've started to stop the run, on a consistent basis, and they're actually making some turnovers. So the funny thing is the Chargers have all the elements if their defense plays well because they obviously have the young gunslinger. They have 2 I mean, Keenan Allen, when he's healthy, is like so underrated. Like, I know you love Keenan Allen. And Mike Williams is a guy, we didn't even bring him up earlier, but he's a guy I'd love to see on the Eagles because I know he's a free agent and he's that big body guy that we're lacking. That guy makes like some amazing, uphill catches. And then you have Eckler in the backfield, who's like basically like a do-it-all guy. Like, he runs, catches, and pretty much he's
it all.
A big part of their. I think he's like 35% of their offense. So they're definitely a team. I agree with Callum. Like they're a sneaky team. Like if you wanted to put a good bet and maybe get some good cash, like you said, Phil.
Yeah, I might be looking on FanDuel here after the show here, and let's see. I just made a free plug for FanDuel. If you want me to make any more plugs for you, FanDuel, hit me up. So we can work out a sponsorship. No more free plugs after that, though. Okay.
Do you know if we're talking about sneaky teams as well? I completely forgot. Could you make a case for the Patriots this year?
I don't know if they would be considered sneaky. I mean, they were sneaky getting to first place in their division, but I mean. Let's just be honest. I mean, Tom Brady left, went and won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. Bill Belichick wants to prove he can win a Super Bowl without Tom Brady.
He's pissed.
Yeah, I would think they're at least one of the two favorites to make the AFC Championship game at this point. And you brought up your friend, your co-host, who's a Bills fan. I mean, there can't be a more disappointing team than Buffalo right now this season. And I think Buffalo's disappointment is, perfectly translating into New England's, success this year.
Yeah, he's obviously been speaking about some of the guys. Obviously, I think for them, like we were talking about one-dimensional teams earlier, and I still think the Bills, went into the season and didn't address their big need, which was their running game and the lack of the running game. So you've got Singletary, Moss, and then they've obviously been bringing Matt Breida into the offense a lot more over the last couple of weeks, but I still think they need to. Obviously, their offensive line is a bit of a mess at the minute. I think they, every time you kind of see Josh Allen scrambling for his life. Obviously, losing Tre'Davious White the other week was absolutely huge. So I still think there's question marks over the Bills, especially their offense and their reliance on Josh Allen to just sling it every game. Because I think Josh Allen was their leading rusher last year, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So I still think
he might be the leading rusher this year as well.
Yeah, he might be. Yeah.
And the only other team, not to jump in, but another team that I kind of just thought about too, like as Callum was talking about the Patriots, how about the Titans, who will be getting, don't forget, Derrick Henry back for the playoffs? Like, I'm not saying that they're going to go to the Super Bowl, but they're a team that could upset in the first round or, be one of those teams that kind of goes further. They do have a stellar defense. Yeah. I know, and they've had a lot of injuries. Obviously, A.J. Brown is out, I think, but he'll be coming back too. I don't think he's out all season.
No, he's not. He's not on IR for the rest of the season. There's a chance
and they did get Julio back. So I'm not saying they're a team, but I'm looking around other teams that could possibly make any kind of headway. Don't forget, too, the Colts. Jonathan Taylor has been an absolute insane beast. I mean, his rushing total is like far and away higher than anybody in the league. Absolutely. And we mentioned Carson. So and the Colts play great defense. So I think the AFC actually has a lot more competitive, as far as like.
So here's the question to wrap the show up, guys. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of parity in the NFL this year. We're all just debating all these different teams. There is no clear cut. Like most years, you've got one or two super dominant teams that at this point in the season, we say that is the favorite to make the Super Bowl, the favorite to win the Super Bowl, whatever it may be out of each conference. But this year you can make a case. We just did for 7-8 different teams. Why is there so much parity in the NFL this season? I can't quite put my finger on what's causing this, jumbled up, thing with all these teams together. It's a tough call to see why it's like that. I see Callum thinking he's trying to come up with the answer.
Yeah. But you think it could be something to do with, and I'm not using it as an excuse because I know every team has injuries, and I know COVID, obviously right now is wreaking havoc. But if you look throughout the season, because I realize it playing fantasy. When you play fantasy football, and I have, I have like
475.3 teams.
But I'm noticing it like a lot of weeks where you have, all these star players that you can't put into the lineup. That has to affect teams in real life as well. I mean, and so maybe I'm not saying it's an excuse, but I think the injuries this year have been far and away more than previous years than I can remember. And a lot of that, I think, is maybe to do with the lack of, only having the 3 preseason games as opposed to 4. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because you're asking the question.
The injuries could be the thing there. Callum, do you have a different answer? Or?
I actually agree with what Jason was saying about the injuries. I think some of the injuries, like I can't remember a season where there's been this many injuries to big guys. There's just too many to name. Obviously, the Derrick Henry one comes straight to mind, but obviously the Tre'Davious White one a few weeks ago, like the Ravens basically losing their whole rushing game before the season started, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. I can't remember a season where there was this many guys out, for one reason or other, where it's injury related or COVID related. So I definitely think they're two factors. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I love the fact that it's so
both of what you're saying. Maybe it's not the loss of the preseason game, but obviously off-season workouts have been different the last year or so. Off-season, mini camps and things like that. The team doesn't get together to work out all off-season like it did. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, but
but it's a great question. It's like the $1 million question because you're right. It is definitely more parity.
Yeah. There's way more parity. All right, we're gonna wrap up this show here real quick, Callum. Let everyone know again where they can find you, when your podcast is, where they can find your podcast and stuff like that.
So we're just on Twitter at Brits Guide NFL, Brits Guide to the NFL on all major podcast providers. We kind of like to do a few live shows. We did I don't know if you guys saw, we did like a mental health in sports episode the other week.
Absolutely.
With Franca. I think you guys know Franca.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really good. We really enjoyed that episode. But other than that, we kind of do weekly previews and predictions for all the NFL matchups each week. We met a lot of interesting guys. You two right here. Thank you guys so much for kind of letting me come on and speak some Eagles.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to have you on. You do some great work over there, and it's great to get the different perspective. Not living in Philly. You see things from afar like you do. It's great to get that perspective. I don't know how you guys do it, staying up as late as you do to watch football games over there. That's some true passion. That 5-hour time zone difference, man. Especially when the Eagles have like an 8:00 football game or something like that. It's got to be a little rough.
It's brutal at times, yeah.
I mean, you're a young college kid, so you can handle it.
My sleep schedule is already messed up, so it doesn't make too much of a difference to me anyway.
Oh man, well, thank you very much. So, real quick, I want to plug tonight. I've got the Ref the District coming on, Trending for 4 quarters. They're a great Washington football team podcast group. All 3 of them. We had them on in the off season to do a Washington football preview for their season. So I'm running it back. I'm bringing all 3 guys on tonight. So make sure you're tapped into DSM Media tonight at 9 p.m. Ref the District will be joining me. We're going to dive deeper into Washington and their problems and their injuries and stuff like that, and see what they think of the rest of their upcoming season. And we'll be back here tomorrow morning. Jason and I, Sixers play tonight. We'll be recapping that game. We'll go over the fact that the Flyers are on a 3-game winning streak. We'll preview the Thursday night football game. So we'll have a jam-packed show tomorrow morning as well. Again, this is DSM Media. This is Trending in the AM. We're live. Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Make sure you're following, subscribing, doing all that great stuff. We greatly appreciate it as we continue on the road to 500 on YouTube. And as always, brought to you by Manscaped, the leader in men's grooming products. Manscaped.com, promo code TRENDING, TRENDING. Make sure you check them out. Everybody have a great day. Again, thank you very much to Callum for coming on at Brits Guide NFL.
You guys.
Much appreciated. Everybody have a great day. And as we end every show, especially when we're talking Eagles, go Birds.
Go Birds.